right, but not this one. Okay, so let's get started. So, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Okay, so welcome back again for those of you who are back, and welcome to those of you who are not back but who are haven't been here before. So we are in the middle of the Sāmaññaphala Sutta and looking at the gradual training, and we have come to the point of giving up the 5 hindrances. And last time, which is 2 weeks ago, we saw that this happens just as we start with the meditation practice. That's where the hindrances are given up. And so this is kind of interesting. I made the point last time that there are lots of defilements, obviously, in the mind that we have to work with basically all the time, trying to reduce any kind of excessive problems that we have, especially things like ill will, which are very kind of unhelpful in the spiritual path. But only when those hindrances or defilements have been abandoned to quite a large degree are we really ready to meditate, because strong hindrances are going to be very problematic in meditation because they drive the mind into the past and into the future and all of these kind of things. So when we come to meditation practice, there's only refined hindrances left, refined defilements left. And so the 5 pancha nivarana is really a name for those refined hindrances that remain when we come to meditation practice. And they have to be given up at this point. This is a point at which they have to be abandoned so that the meditation becomes really powerful and we can come to the last factor of the Eightfold Path, samma samadhi, jhanas, the deep meditations. They are the result of abandoning the hindrances and then allowing the mind to unify around the object of meditation, whatever that might be. And so this is pretty much what we looked at last time, just kind of recapping a little bit. And now we want to look at these 5 hindrances in a little bit more detail and specifically how they come to be given up through the meditation practice. So we saw these things we saw last time. They go to the wilderness, etc., the root of a tree. These are all the meditation parts. And then so they sit down, set the body straight, and establish mindfulness in their presence. So is the standard way of talking about meditation in the suttas. You find this in the Anapanasati Sutta as a kind of beginning, the background to doing the Anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing here. So what happens next? And what happens next is the following here. Giving up covetousness for the world, to meditate with a heart rid of covetousness, cleansing the mind of covetousness. Giving up ill will and malevolence, then meditate with a mind rid of ill will, full of sympathy for all living beings. Cleansing the mind of ill will, giving up dullness and drowsiness, they meditate with a mind rid of dullness and drowsiness, perceiving light, mindful and aware, cleansing the mind of dullness and drowsiness. Giving up restlessness and remorse, they meditate without restlessness, the mind peaceful inside, cleansing the mind of restlessness and remorse. Giving up doubt, they meditate having gone beyond doubt, not undecided about skillful qualities, cleansing the mind of doubt. So these are the 5 hindrances, so it's kind of interesting the way it is phrased here, because it just says that you give up these hindrances one after the other. It doesn't say anything about how you give it up. It doesn't give any context for the giving up. So we kind of have to figure that out for ourselves. We have to rely on our general understanding of the suttas to understand how this actually happens. But because we are now looking at meditation practice, we're now looking at watching the breath. Yeah, we're doing metta meditation, maybe doing body contemplation, doing death contemplation, whatever is the meditation object that you're using. But most often it will mean breath meditation, because that is such an important part of meditation in the suttas. So the point here is that when you do breath meditation, and you do focus on the breath, actually the giving up of the hindrances here, looking at the first one, happens automatically, largely. It is not something that you actually have to actively do. Earlier on the path, you may have to actively counter ill will, you may have to develop metta, you have to learn to see people in the right way so you can forgive them and have compassion for them and let go of these negative thoughts. So initially, that's what we have to do to be able to have that sense restraint. But at this point, all you really have to do is stay with the breath. And as you stay with the breath, it's as if the hindrances gradually just decline. They disappear all by themselves. And so that's, I think, one of the reasons why it doesn't actually say anything in particular about how to give them up, because the giving up just happens. It's kind of what happens when you focus on something which doesn't distract you, doesn't lead you astray, doesn't go the wrong way. Why is that the case? And the reason why it is the case is because all of these hindrances, they need to be fed to stay alive. So desire needs to be fed by looking at that object of your desire and seeing something beautiful in it. That's why you desire that object, because it looks attractive, it looks delightful. But if you don't feed that object, if you don't feed that desire, we're looking at the object in that way, then gradually it just dies down. It disappears, and for that reason the attachment and the desires and everything gradually fade away. This is the idea of just sitting there with mindfulness, just being aware, not doing anything. This kind of the meditation, you see the suttas with no willpower, the kind of Ajahn Brahmali meditation, just sit longer meditation. I like that meditation. It's such a easy and beautiful way to think about meditation. Just sit longer. Is that only 1 hour? Sit 2 hours. Only 2? Sit 3. See what happens. That's kind of the Ajahn Brahmali way. And this is why it works, because if you stay with a meditation object and your mind inclines in the right way, then you will not feed those defilements. And because they're not fed, they will just gradually disappear all by themselves. Especially the first two, ill will and desire, they need to be fed to stay alive. So it is really an automatic part of the process. So what exactly is this idea, this thing that is here called covetousness for the world? What does covetousness word for the world mean? It's not the kind of ordinary term that people use on the street. And if you ask somebody down in the city whether they have covetousness for the world, they wonder what on earth you're talking about. No one uses this kind of vocabulary, right? It's kind of this is kind of what they call Buddhist hybrid English. It is not real English almost. It is kind of it's if you come to the suttas and you are kind of you wonder what on earth is this about. For many Buddhists, we're so used to this way of expressing things that we don't kind of bat an eyelid when we see these terms. We know exactly what is meant. But for ordinary people, it's like, what on earth, covetousness for the world? And so the Pali here is loke abhijja is the Pali word. And the reason why it is translated in this way is because abhijja in the suttas usually means that you covet or you want, you are envious of others and you want what belongs to others. Covetousness is like one of those things you find in the Christian 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's property or something like that. Is that how it is? Does anyone here know anything about the commandments? I think it's something like that. I'm very bad. My Christianity is very poor, and I kind of but something like that I think is the kind of English way of expressing one of these 10 Commandments. So covet is in there, and you can see it goes with thy shall not covet. So you can see it's a bit kind of ancient and outdated. This whole way of expressing things. But here it really is a stand-in for the first hindrance. And the first hindrance is also often called kama chanda. And when it's called kamacchanda, the meaning is actually far more obvious, because kama is the five sense world. That's kind of how it is defined everywhere. The five sense world, and chanda is the desire. So desires in relation to the five sense world. That's what kamacchanda is. And so there it is very obvious. So here is just another way of thinking about the same thing. Kamacchanda, loke, abhijja are two alternative ways to show the same kind of defilement. Loke abhijja, covetousness for the world. World, what is the idea of world here? And the idea of world in Buddhism is that world refers to different things depending on context. So world sometimes means the five sense world. It's often defined like that in the suttas. They talk about going to the end of the world. And the end of the world is achieved when you have a jhana attainment. That's called the end of the world. That is the five sense world that is talked about there. So this is the same kind of thing here. Covetousness for the world means covetousness, basically, maybe in relation to the world would be better. Loke abhijja, because you don't covet the whole five sense world. Covetousness in relation to that world, or about that world, or something like that. This is the idea here. And so then as you meditate, that disappears, that desire in the five sense world. It's a very broad thing. It is not a narrow thing. This is kind of a very, very large area, because this is basically everything we know, through our ordinary life, is the five sense world. And of course, we're going to have attachments to that, because many of the things that are dear and agreeable to us, well, they are in that five sense world. So you meditate, and one of the things, of course, that happens is that sometimes you meditate and maybe you are happily kind of watching the breath and you feel quite peaceful, and sometimes you may have a bit of joy arising and things are going very well, but then it kind of stops. It doesn't go any deeper. There are a lot of people who kind of get to a certain level in meditation, they feel peaceful, or maybe they find joy, but they feel they can't really go any deeper than that. This is a kind of very, very, very common experience. You come to like a plateau, and that's it. So then the question is, well, what do we do? And the answer is very often related to this particular hindrance. There's some sort of holding on, some sort of desire, some sort of attachment in relation to the five senses. And so we learn. So then what you can do is to understand that. Okay, I'm not going deeper. So this is very likely to be the reason. It is likely to be the reason because, well, that is the main kind of hindrance, that holding on to things, not being able to let go. This is what you kind of talk about throughout the sutta, that world of the five senses being problematic. It is the first of the five hindrances. The first is always the most important one. Everything is graduated in Buddhism. There's no such thing as a random sequence of things. Things are sequential for a reason, and this comes first. It is the most important one. And so what can we do when the meditation stops? It doesn't go any deeper. And what we then can do is to contemplate that world a little bit, to remember the downside of that world, to remember that in the end that world is not really interesting. What is interesting is the spiritual path, the spiritual joy, the spiritual peace, the spiritual qualities, because they are of a different quality. They have a quality of peace to them. They take you towards insight. They take you towards understanding. They are free of so many of the problems that you have in the five sense world, and you are in a sense in charge of these things. This is the beautiful thing about the idea of the spiritual life, is that you are an island unto yourself, attadipa. Someone asked recently, what does it mean, attadipa? You are your own refuge. Isn't that kind of very anti-Buddhist? You are your own refuge. What does that mean? Atta, what is this atta anyway? Does it mean your higher self? Does it mean your soul? Does it mean your inherent essence? And of course it doesn't mean any of those things, because all of those things are not part of the Buddhist teachings. There is no inherent essence according to the Buddhist teachings. And so attadipa, what it refers to is this feeling of being within yourself, not reliant on the world outside, not reliant on other people, but being self-contained. You have a sense of being, you have a certain ability to kind of go within yourself and find a refuge within. That means you have a safety from the world, you have a safety from all the problems around you. And that is a very powerful feeling, to have that safety. It's like you have your own home that you return into, your own little house within yourself, and you let go of everything outside. You can see why that is a refuge. But of course, with that refuge, which is yourself, you also have the Dhamma, because those things that you are experiencing at that time are precisely the things that the Buddha said we should take refuge in. Yeah, that is the Dhamma, that experience of joy, the experience of tranquility, the experience of clarity and mindfulness, and all of those kind of things. So this is kind of where we have that sense of atta, with it, we get this kind of self-refuge within in this particular way. And so this is what happens there. And so the idea here is that we do contemplate these things a little bit. You contemplate kind of downside of that world outside, and that allows you more to go to the Attadipa, the island, taking yourself as an island, taking refuge within yourself, because you understand that the world outside is so unreliable and so uncertain. So this is how you contemplate the downside of the external world. It allows you then to go deeper in your own meditation. You lose that interest, and losing the interest in the external world is precisely giving up this hindrance right here. That external world is never going to be reliable, never going to be something you can rely on. The inner world you can rely on far more. Even that ultimately you have to give up. That comes much further down the line. And so then as you contemplate that, maybe sometimes you can do that within meditation. That can be death contemplation is one way of doing that, because death contemplation, has those factors kind of built into it, the danger of the external world. Because you're going to die, okay, then the external world is out of control, because that's what death means. You can't take it with you. Or you contemplate the 31 parts of the body, or you contemplate the 4 elements, or you contemplate impermanence more generally, or you contemplate old age, or you contemplate everything that is agreeable and dear to you must become otherwise. All of these bright and happy contemplations of Buddhism. So this is the thing about the Buddhist path, is that those things that may seem so kind of negative for some people, actually they become very beautiful when you understand how to contemplate them in the right way. This is the great thing about all these contemplations. And then that loka abhijja, gradually, it kind of becomes weaker and weaker, and it allows your meditation to deepen as a consequence. But as I always like to say, and this is kind of an important point here, is that when you do these kind of contemplations that may be a bit some people will say, negative, negativity. Make sure you also build up the other side of of your mind, the joy side of the mind, the meaning side of the mind. So you feel that you actually are in touch with something that actually is delightful and attractive and pleasant. If you become too one-sided, then actually your mind becomes unbalanced, and then you won't be able to deal with it in the right way. So think about these things in this way, and then there will be some you find that right balance, and you don't become like too dry and too upset and too angry. Sometimes if you think only about the downside of things, it might get you upset and angry as well. So this is the idea of covetousness for the 5 sense world. And what is then you take this deeper and deeper and deeper. And the deepest point, giving up that desire for the 5 sense world, actually means giving up the desire for the senses themselves. And that is where it becomes really, really profound. You give up the desire to see, you give up the desire to hear, to feel anything, because you understand that actually if there's nothing interesting in that world, then the very fact of having these 5 senses doesn't really make any sense. You come to the point where you're willing to give up the 5 senses. And you can see why it is so difficult to enter deep samadhi, or not difficult, but why it takes a lot of practice, is because giving up those 5 senses voluntarily, when we think seeing is important and hearing is important or whatever, it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. It's like saying, yes, make me blind. Most people say, no, don't make me blind. But here it's like, yes, make me blind. And you don't know. Maybe when you come out of meditation, because you've given up your sight, maybe you come out, maybe you're blind. It's a bit like that. But actually, you're okay with that because you know that that is not the area where you find your happiness anymore. So that is the hindrance number one, the covetousness. And it's basically desire for the five sense world. So you give that up in this way. You meditate with a heart rid of covetousness. You can imagine how bright you become. Yeah, that whole world is no longer meaningful for you. Cleaning the mind, cleansing the mind of covetousness. This is like a dirty part in the mind. It doesn't make the mind bright. When you clean it up like this, that's when the mind becomes bright and clear and powerful and all of these kind of things. Prior to that, the mind is still partly in darkness. Yeah, that's kind of what's going on here. So, anyone want to say anything about covetousness for the world? So, thank you. Chitasi, over here, please. I think you're going to have to use the microphone. I think that's...
Not only to the five sense world, if I wanted to achieve something, is that also a blockage to meditation?
Yes, so
like
it is.
Jhana, Nibbana, and things like that.
Yeah, so that probably comes, I would say that comes under restlessness more than it comes under five sense world. So it probably comes under restlessness because your mind is still restless. I want this, I want that. And that is restlessness. It's a different kind of wanting. That's more wanting in the realm of spiritual things. So slightly different. What is that kind of the spiritual dukkha? You know the spiritual dukkha? Yeah. When will I become an arahant? Just like all these other ones. That's the spiritual dukkha. It's a kind of it's a good kind of dukkha because it leads to the end of dukkha. So you obviously have to want these things a little bit because otherwise you never sit down, you never read the suttas, you never take an interest. So you have to have some degree of chanda, to get that kind of desire to get going. Yeah.
Thank you. Ajahn, what is the actual Pali term for giving up hindrances? What is the direct translation of that?
The Pali term,
what did the Buddha use?
Let's have a look because I cannot remember now what it is. Let's see.
He's giving up the right translation, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So let's see. I should have it here because I was looking at this before. So, okay, so getting fairly close. Let's see if we can find it here. Pahaya. So this is the same word as pahana. Pahana means, that's giving up. That's kind of the standard word for giving up. Can you see the word pahaya there?
Loke pahaya.
Yeah, loke pahaya, exactly. I can reduce the size a bit so we get a bit more on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gone to the wrong place. Oh, what happened now? Jumping around. Okay, so here we are. So that's the one. So abhijjang loke pahaya vigita bijjena cetasa viharati abhijjaya chittang parisodeti. See it in the middle there. This is the word pahaya right there. Right. And that means having abandoned loke. So is he. Abhijja is covetousness. Loke in the world. Pahaya having abandoned abhijja in the world.
Okay. I was thinking avoid might be a better term because if you say give up, you have to have it first.
Say again?
When you say give up,
yeah.
it is something you have that you give up.
Yeah.
But these things come up when you try to meditate or when you're in samadhi,
Yeah.
and then you avoid that and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, he's avoiding. But according to this, I think Pahaya is, as you say.
Yeah, I think the thing is that it kind of, if it comes up, it means that you have given it up, but you haven't really given it up fully. You still have some underlying attachment probably that may not show at that time, but you probably have to give it up in a deeper kind of way as well. So it arises, but why does it arise in the mind? Well, actually, probably because it's kind of latently there, kind of like a coal sitting there, kind of is still hot, the flame waiting to come out. And so, but you want to extinguish that coal more.
Yes, thank you.
When the coal is extinguished, no flame can come up anymore.
I suppose.
So no, but you're right. You're right, though. It is a bit. It's a little bit. So it is kind of a deeper kind of letting go. There's different levels here of letting go, or giving up, or abandoning. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ajahn.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
This is the problem with these things. Okay. Okay, so that is the first hindrance. Anyone else want to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to ask, this Lokya Pahaya, is this same as Lokya?
Over there you are, okay.
Same as Lokya Dhamma? Worldly things?
Lokya, yeah?
Yeah.
In the world.
Lokya Pahaya, is the same as Lokya Dhamma?
Lokya Dhamma?
Yeah.
Lokya Dhamma is qualities or things in the world. So the Lokya Dhamma, the eight worldly, often called the eight worldly winds, what sometimes is translated as.
The worldly things.
It means the eight worldly things, So that is, there are 8 things in the world, Lokya Dhamma. This here is more like just a general desire in regard to the world, anything in the world, in the 5 sense world. This is much more comprehensive. This is a whole of the 5 sense world. The other one is a bit more specific. It's about fame and obscurity, praise and blame, and those kind of things. Also gain and loss, and happiness and suffering in that world. So it's a similar kind of idea, but slightly different angles on the same. It's not exactly the same thing. It's a different angles on the.
One of those Lokya Dhamma.
Yeah, Lokya. In both cases, I would say Lokya means that 5 world of the 5 senses. Yeah.
So covetousness is one of those 5, Lokya Dhamma.
Not really. It's not actually there. There it's you have gain and loss. That's the labha and alabha, gain and loss, and you have fame and obscurity, yasa and ayasa, and then you have praise and blame. What is that? Pasangsa, and pasangsa is praise. What is blame? I can't remember what it is now, but it's something like that. And you have sukha dukkha, which is the two last ones. So it's not. No, it's not. That is not there. This is specifically about desire in the 5 sense world. All desire in that world. That could include many of those other ones in the Lokya Dhamma. Could be under that.
This is not one of them. Not one of them.
No, it's not one of them, because as I said, all of those Pali words are different. The different words. Used there. That does not relate directly to that. No.
I'm just going to ask, so covetousness is like an attachment or desire, whereas ill will is like an unpleasant thing. So is it that when you're going into meditation, you're giving up what is senses-wise pleasant, so you're coming into something more neutral, or?
You are, in a sense, you're giving up both the what is pleasant and also what is unpleasant. Because it's not the same. Ill will is not the same thing as something which is unpleasant in the 5 senses. I mean, you can have food that you don't like, and I don't want that, and put it aside. That's like aversion to the food. It doesn't necessarily mean you have ill will. It just means you don't want to eat it, right? So it's a bit different things. And so I would say covetousness in that world, lokya abhijja, it has to do with all sensory experience and how you react to that sensory experience. So it's like covetousness and the anti-covetousness. You can say the anti-covetousness included in the covetousness here, I would say here. So both of those kind of coming together here. That's what I would argue. Yeah. And ill will is a little bit different. Yeah. Okay. So so we have number one, that's first hindrance. Let's move on to the next one. Giving up ill will and malevolence. They meditate with a mind rid of ill will, full of sympathy for all living beings, cleansing the mind of ill will. So this is obviously a very important part of these hindrances and defilements of the mind, and very often it is an outcome of the first one. Yeah, the first hindrance is there, and very often if you don't check the first hindrance, it can lead to ill will, because you don't get what you want and you get upset because of that. So they are actually very closely related. And so when you look on the Buddhist path, these two hindrances tend to be given up together. It's almost always together. They're given up when you come to the samadhi practice. They are given up, the two fetters are given up at the same time. They are given up when you get reborn in the Brahma Loka, all of these kind of things. So they are closely related to each other. Not exactly related, because you can have ill will also for other reasons. You can have ill will because someone, your ego doesn't like what they have to say. It can also be related to the sense of self as well, but very often is related to the five sense world, this ill will. And so again, most of the ill will is overcome at an earlier stage. Once you come to meditation, you should be reasonably peaceful, not have too much ill will already. That's kind of the ideal. That's what the sense restraint is about, the mindfulness and full awareness, the sati sampajanya is about, to kind of restrain the mind so you don't have too much ill will. So when you sit down, your mind is already kind of peaceful. But again, it is one of those things that these hindrances, because they are so refined, it is possible to have very subtle degrees of ill will and even malevolence. Actually, malevolence doesn't sound too good. I don't know, subtle. Yeah, I guess subtle forms of that as well. They can be very subtle. Yeah, maybe some people talk about having ill will towards the meditation object. And that's possible, yeah, if you are not careful, if you force yourself to do too much meditation, you're not really enjoying it, but I am a Buddhist, I must meditate at least half an hour, or 25 minutes, got 5 minutes to go, don't want to, must do it. And eventually you come to hate the breath because of that. Please don't hate the breath, yeah? It's going to make meditation and the whole spiritual path very difficult if you come to hate the breath. So that is these are the areas where we enjoy these things. And if you don't enjoy it, then take an alternative route. Try to find out what is going on, why it isn't working. Yeah? This is kind of one of those important points. So you kind of go, enjoyment is kind of one of these things that overcomes this idea of ill will very easily. You cannot enjoy the meditation and have ill will towards at the same time. So, but again, it can be a blockage in your meditation, the fact that you have some sort of ill will, yeah? And so then, of course, the opposite to that ill will is to have metta, to have compassion, to have, to have more of these kind of qualities. And so if you find that there is a blockage in this area, and one of the things that we need to do as people who practice meditation is to know ourselves, to know what our hindrances are, to understand what is actually blocking us on the path. And the more you understand yourself, the greater ability you will have in overcoming those things that block you. So if you see that you get upset with things fairly easily, that is a problem, well then you should really try very hard to develop the metta and the compassion, not in meditation necessarily, but just in daily life. How you live with other people, how you look at them, how you deal with them. Yeah? Remember to see people through eyes of sympathy, compassion, understanding, and understand that everyone is suffering in the world. We discussed this quite a bit last time. We had a nice question here about that last time. And it's a very important part of this path. And then as you do that, then you will again find that suddenly your meditation does go deeper, because you have a eliminated so many of these things, through the way you live your ordinary life. So the ordinary life has a very big impact on how the meditation goes. So keep on with these kind of basic ideas, again and again and again. Most people can do with more metta and more compassion. It is very rare to find someone who has too much metta and too much compassion. Actually, that's impossible because you can never really do too much of it. Maybe what you can do is have a misconstrued kind of metta, the one that doesn't really work, that is too forced maybe, or something like that. But you can't have too much of it. That's impossible. Can't have too much compassion. And so you develop this in this way, and then you kind of gradually reduce it, and it stops to become a hindrance. But just like with the sensual desire or the covetousness in the world, a lot of the time all you have to do is just meditate, stay with the breath. One thing I didn't touch on in on the previous hindrance, which is both relevant to both of these, what do you do when these things come up in meditation? How do we deal with them? And the ideal way of dealing with them in meditation, depending on how deep your meditation is, but if it's going reasonably well and you have some thoughts coming up that are kind of leading you in the wrong direction, then usually it's just not to pay any notice to them. Okay, they come up, okay, don't worry about them. Just hang out with the breath, allow them to be in the background, and they will eventually fade away. Don't feed them, don't do anything with them. The moment you take an interest in those thoughts, then it's too late, because at that moment you will feed them. But if you see them arise, but you're not really interested, okay, and that's not interesting, let it be. It will just disappear again. And this is true both for the sensual thoughts related to that world, and it's also true for the thoughts of ill will. They're very weak in the beginning, and if you just stay with them, and if you're with them, you don't feed them, they will just tend to fade away as a consequence. And then gradually these things are overcome. Of course, if you can develop the metta and the karuna, the loving kindness and the compassion, not only are you overcoming ill will, but you are overcoming all the 5 hindrances. So this is a very powerful way of supplementing the mindfulness of breathing meditation. Because if you have a lot of loving kindness and compassion in the world, well, of course, you're not going to have any ill will, but you won't have any desires either. You won't have any desires because you have something better. Why would you desire something silly in the world when you have lots of metta for the world or compassion for the world? So it actually makes your mind very peaceful. No desires, and also you will have no restlessness because that metta is so attractive, the mind will stay with that. It doesn't want to go anywhere else. You won't have any dullness and tiredness because it's so bright and it's so attractive again. The mind will actually naturally be bright because you have that. And also the doubt will not really tend to be there because you know that this is a beautiful quality in the mind. You don't really have to ask anyone whether that's the case or not. It's kind of obvious. And so it's a really great way of giving up the hindrances across the board or having metta in this particular way. And so it's kind of very, very useful. And I think it may very well be that this is one of the reasons why people sometimes don't make more progress in the meditation, because they don't actually do enough in this area. Having more of these qualities, building it up all the time in daily life. Even if you spend all your time just developing metta in daily life, as you go around meeting people, looking at them in the right way, even if you just do that, it will gradually make the meditation come together, because this is such a powerful foundation for all of this. Then you have the opposite here of the idea of metta. You're full of sympathy for all living beings. What is the Pali word for sympathy here? I'm going to mess everything up again by moving around. Let's see if I can find it without too many hindrances. So here you go. Bhuta hita nukampi is the word here for the for sympathy. So bhuta are beings, hita is like benefit, And anukampa here, anukampa is sympathy or compassion or something like that. So it quite literally means having compassion for all beings. So it's not just the fact that you give up ill will. Ideally, you have compassion and sympathy for all beings. The moment you rid the mind of that hindrance, then the opposite tends to come forth, naturally. So it feels natural metta, natural sympathy and compassion because of that. Removing the hindrance is not just boring, it actually allows the other positive side qualities to come forth. And this is kind of the beautiful part of this. So that is a little bit about the hindrance of ill will and vyapada in the Pali language. Any comments about ill will and malevolence and this particular hindrance? Everyone is happy with this hindrance? Yes, please. Yeah.
So Ajahn, I imagine this is the ill will is in different levels. It goes to even an irritation. So is it beneficial to look at your life as you're living it, thinking, oh, this is irritating me slightly, maybe I can let it go, something like that? Or just done in meditation practice?
Yes, absolutely. It can be helpful. Absolutely. So any kind of, any one of those things in your life. I mean, focus on the bigger issues. So if you sometimes find that you kind of fly into a rage or whatever, then deal with that first and deal with the irritation afterwards. It's always important to understand that you need to deal with the coarser hindrances first, and then the middling ones, then the refined ones. And this is, otherwise you don't actually get very far if you focus in the right order. But in the end, yes, you have to deal with the small irritations as well. Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn.
So, yeah.
So I was thinking that there's a lot of metta practices. Are there a lot of compassion, karuna practices? Because is karuna mainly looking at suffering or impermanence and non-self as well? Can you feel compassionate towards other beings because you realize we are all empty shells just walking around driven by our karma?
You can. I mean, suffering is certainly very useful. You just realizing that people are suffering and then just having general compassion for them. And even if people are bad or do stupid things, they are still suffering, and very often the badness is a result of the suffering in their life. So if someone treats you badly, probably because they're suffering, otherwise they wouldn't treat you badly. So that's already a very, very useful way of thinking about it.
Do you know the Metta Sutta that you chant?
Yeah.
Is there something like that for compassion?
Is there something for compassion? There is just the kind of the standard way of spreading metta, spreading the 4 Brahma Viharas to the world. There's a chant like that as well, called the spreading of the 4 Brahma Viharas. You can probably look it up on the internet, I would think.
Yes, please.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay. But generally speaking, compassion is just understanding the suffering of people, and also understanding that they are conditioned. We talked about this very briefly last time, but this is very closely related to the idea of non-self. Is that if there is no self, if there is no inherent essence, it means that people are entirely conditioned. And if they are entirely conditioned, it means that they can't really control. It means that whatever they do, it just comes out of them because of their past and that kind of thing. And they are victims of their conditioning. Now, if someone is a victim, are you going to have compassion for them, or are you going to shout at them? You will have compassion, right? This is the point. So you see them in a sense as victims in that way. It's a very beautiful way of overcoming that ill will. Is covetousness one of the Mara? The 7 I think that's a Christian idea, isn't it? 7 deadly sins. The Mara's daughters. What is it? Tanha, Raga, Tanha, Arati, and what? Raga, Arati, and Tanha. Okay, is it raga, yeah, is it both tanha and, okay, so they all are around discontent and desires and this kind of things, yeah, so they're very closely related to abhijja, yeah, but not 7 deadly sins, that I think we're moving outside of the scope of the Dhamma. Yeah. All right. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So now we come to the third hindrances, giving up dullness and drowsiness, tinna midda. They meditate with the mind rid of dullness and drowsiness, perceiving light, mindful and aware, cleansing the mind of dullness and drowsiness. So tinna midda these are two things. Dullness is kind of the mind being dull. Yeah, I mean, I guess everyone knows what that means. Sometimes the mind is sharp, other times it's dull. Drowsiness is what you feel after having a good meal, and the mind kind of wants to shut down a little bit. That's kind of drowsiness. Midda is the Pali word for that. So these are two slightly different things, and because they are slightly different, they should also be dealt with in slightly different ways. So the drowsiness you have after a meal, well, sometimes maybe you need to lie down a little bit. Yeah, you have a rest after the meal. Even the Buddha was known in the hot season, yeah, especially to actually lie down after the meal. Usually they will only have one meal a day, so I guess that makes it more natural to feel a bit drowsy. And so that is quite a common thing, yeah, in kind of monastic circles to often have a rest after the meal. But that's kind of how it often works best. That's a good time to have a rest. But the ordinary dullness, the dullness of the mind, which can occur at any time, that is more like a kind of a hindrance proper, a hindrance that you can overcome really more readily by knowing how to deal with it. So here we are dealing with very kind of refined kinds of dullness when we come to meditation practice. Sometimes you may not even be aware that your mind is dull. Yeah, it is just like it just isn't 100% sharp. But because your mind has maybe never been 100% sharp, yeah, you don't know if it is a little bit dull. So you have no idea what is going on, what is stopping the mind from being sharp. Or it can be dullness that arises during the meditation. You're going well, you feel quite bright, but then dullness arises. So how to overcome that? And the answer is to overcome that is usually, again, to focus on the positive side of the meditation, the joy, the brightness, the thing that is attractive, the thing that energizes the mind, that gives energy to the mind. And so that's why the Buddha, when he talks about the hindrances, he talks about the opposites. So the opposites, when you have dullness and drowsiness, is to focus on the piti, the energy, the dhammavicaya. These are the three of the bojjhangas. 7 bojjhangas, 3 of them are for giving rise to energy, 3 of them are to calm the mind down. Mindfulness, passaddhi, and samadhi are to calm it down. And so you focus on those things that energize the mind. So if you're watching the breath, well, what is the beautiful part of the experience? Yeah, if you feel a bit of piti, then okay, focus more, enjoy that piti. Don't allow the mind to become dull. If you already have a nimitta, the focus on the beauty here of what you're seeing in your mind. And all of these positive, delightful experiences that have a degree of joy with them, a degree of positive feeling with them, they will abandon that dullness. Sometimes you may have to come out of your meditation because maybe it's not working, and then you contemplate something which inspires you. What is it that's inspiring? Something that lifts you up. A bit of recollection of your kindness, your generosity, a recollection that you're living well, a recollection of the Buddha maybe. These are all the standard recollections in the suttas: Chaganusati, Silanusati, Buddhanusati. And if you can inspire yourself in that way, or do metta meditation is another way of bringing the brightness to the mind. Having a sense of gratitude is another way. There's large number of ways. You know what works for you, and bring the inspiration back. And then when the inspiration comes back, then that's when the drowsiness will often get banished, and the dullness as well. Sometimes when a meditation becomes very deep, you may not be aware that what is going on. It kind of doesn't go further. Maybe it's a tiny bit of dullness remaining. The mind isn't 100% sharp. And then all you really have to do at that point, if the meditation is deep, is to stay with the most beautiful part of the meditation object. Stay with that nimitta, in the center of it, where it is the most bright, where it is the most unified, where it is the most attractive. And then gradually the mind will gladden itself. You have the expression in the Anapanasati Sutta, which is pamojayang chittang. Pamojayang chittang means gladdening the mind. The mind just gladdens itself by staying with a meditation object. It gladdens itself. It samadhang chittang, it becomes stilled in samadhi, and finally vimochayang chittang, which is the liberation of the mind. The three stage number 10, 11, and 12 in Anapanasati Sutta. Perceiving light, you can see that aloka sanya is an important part of this, because when you perceive light, again, this is again something that brightens up the mind. So that can be the nimitta, it can be anything which is bright in the mind, that you are perceiving a general light or a specific light. Mindful and aware, sati sampajano, cleansing the mind of dullness and drowsiness. Hindrance number 3 here. Don't try to overcome this hindrance if the mind is not already quite refined, because you won't be able to overcome it. If you have these things in very strong versions of these things, then usually you have to overcome the sensual desire and the ill will. That's kind of what you have to overcome instead. So, any questions on dullness and drowsiness? Okay,
Would you consider that this is a state of the mind is in equilibrium or equanimous?
Equanimous. Sometimes it feels like that.
No restlessness, no dullness, no aversion, no desire?
It can feel like that. It can feel like a state of equilibrium, but it's the wrong equilibrium. It's miccha equilibrium. So that's the problem. You want equilibrium that is bright, and not equilibrium that is dull. So this is that's kind of why it is still a hindrance there. And sometimes actually there may be a desire there, but it's kind of underlying it. One of the reasons why you feel dullness is because you want to escape. That's one of the reasons why the mind sometimes feels dullness. You don't want to be present. There's some dukkha maybe in your life, or something you don't want to be with, and so the mind just blots out, and it kind of just lets go too much, and it goes, let's go into dullness. So this is why on the path of meditation, you want to go slowly and systematically. Sometimes if you let go too fast, you make the mind goes into dullness, for example. So you have to kind of slowly, and you kind of feel your way through this, and then you get there.
But then, if you go positive, like you say, bright, you can be excited and then it disappears.
So don't get excited either. Don't get excited, don't get dull. Middle way, all the way. It's tricky. It's tricky business. Okay. Good, let's go on to the next hindrance. So, giving up restlessness and remorse. They meditate without restlessness, the mind peaceful inside, cleansing the mind of restlessness and remorse. So, restlessness, we all know what that is. And at this particular point, there is not going to be much restlessness left in the mind, because the mind is already free of all the coarse things that makes it very agitated. But the mind is still moving. As long as there is a movement in the mind, there's a degree of restlessness there. Uddhacca is the Pali word for this. So this just means that the mind is not 100% content, not 100% happy. You can see why contentment here again is one of these kind of critical terms, to be just fully happy with what is going on. The restlessness can arise from a slightly remaining interest in the five sense world. It can come from the sense of self. The sense of self gives rise to restlessness. Thinking about yourself, about me. Who am I? What am I doing? My family, my country, my identity, and all of these kind of things. All of these things obsess the mind. Because the sense of I is one of those kind of core defilements of the mind that kind of drives almost all of these defilements at the root of all of these things, all of this papancha, if you like. And so again, the way to overcome it is usually just to stay with the meditation object. Gradually giving it up, and gradually seeing the mind calm down. Now, restlessness is often attractive to people. And we are attracted to restlessness. And the reason why we are attracted to it is because we are doers. We identify with the doing. I am a doer. And because you identify as a doer, it means that you enjoy activity. And restlessness is a very subtle kind of activity. Right? So because you enjoy activity, and because you identify as that, can be very hard to actually let it go completely, because you don't want to let go of who you are. If you are that doing, it means you have to disappear. And of course, that is very, very difficult. And so this is kind of a root problem here with the idea of restlessness, is that giving up who you are is actually very, very difficult. Of course, once the mind does become very peaceful, you realize that that identity of yours, you will identify with a pile of, dung, poo. This kind of Ajahn Brahmali simile of the worm in the lovely pile of dung, right? That's kind of that same simile idea. We identify with all of these things that are not really worthy of identifying with. That's kind of where all of these things come from. We're identifying with dukkha, basically. And why identify with dukkha? Well, because we are blind, because we don't really understand what is going on. And then when you go beyond all that restlessness and you find the happiness beyond, then you realize that all of that was actually just dukkha before. And you can then stop identifying it, because why on earth would you want to identify with dukkha? We don't want to be dukkha. And then you're kind of reducing your sense of self enormously through that very, very fact. But it's very profound and very hard. This is why these things are actually really, really profound. Because giving these things up, you are giving up what is often by far the most kind of important sense of self that we have. The sense of the agent inside, the sense of the doer, the creator, the artist. All of these things that are so put on a pedestal in our society, people who are creative people. And very difficult to let go of that. We're all creative people in certain ways, and so very hard to let go of. And so, it shouldn't be surprising that your mind is going to be a bit restless, and letting go of it it takes time. And so you stay with the meditation object, and as you stay with it, you let go more and more. You gradually kind of peeling off these layers of the onion. This is one of the similes used in the suttas. It's actually the plantain tree or the banana tree is the simile in the suttas. And as you peel away the layers, they're more and more you come all the way to the core of the banana tree. And what is there? Nothing. That's kind of what is so interesting about this. It's just all gone. And these layers are the layers of doing. These are the sankharas being stripped away. You go deeper and deeper into meditation, more and more sankharas stripped away, until you come to this place where there's nothing at all. And that is kind of what is going on here. And then you gradually get used to this idea of living without that doer, and the restlessness is gone, and you stop identifying with that. Then there is the idea of remorse. This is the kukucha. Also is a degree, can also be translated as anxiety or remorse. And this is just this feeling that you don't feel entirely worthy, perhaps. You feel sense of, you feel bad about what you have done. And because of that, the mind doesn't really allow you to settle down and to become peaceful, because you don't feel almost like you don't deserve it or something like that. And so this shows you the importance of just living well. Yeah, and again, here is another place where metta and compassion comes in very powerfully, because if you have that metta and compassion really, really built up, then that remorse is never going to happen, because that these are the counterparts to that remorse. If you have a lot of metta for everyone in the world, and so again, it becomes a very powerful part of this. The mind is peaceful inside. You are within yourself. You have already kind of largely let go of the 5 hindrances, but you don't even have any restlessness within. The mind is just staying happily with the meditation object, and you are cleansing the mind of restlessness and remorse. Uddhacca kukucca. So, what do you reckon? Any any reckonings or no reckonings? Ananda. Yeah.
Ajahn, that in the 10 fetters also, we have the Uddhacca, I think it's the number 8, I think.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. But it's fairly high there.
Yeah.
And fairly low here. What do you think of the connection? Because it is actually it is at the Arahant level that it is eliminated.
Yeah.
So, but here at a very basic level, these are different levels, I guess.
Well, I think that I think the reason is because here you are the coarser one at the beginning. So actually we go into more refined defilements, in a sense, moving to the more refined ones. And so those more refined ones are probably also more, you can imagine why an anagami or someone very elevated might have a very refined defilement, but not maybe why they would have the coarser ones. But of course, it doesn't quite work, because the next one is doubt, which is given up for the stream end. So there's no there's no immediate correlation here. And I think it's just that some of these defilements are very broad, and some of them are more narrow in scope. And restlessness is obviously very, very broad. It comes from many different places. Like kamacchanda, the first one, only comes from the 5 sense world. So if you give that up, of course you cannot have it anymore. But restlessness also comes from just mana, the conceit. It comes from the sense of I, basically. And because it comes from the sense of I, it means that, that's why it goes with you all the way to the very end, until you give up the sense of I. So they are it's just the different scope somehow of these different things. Some of them are,
Maybe perhaps even underlying tendency to, at Sanyojana level.
Yeah.
Maybe, though it is not mentioned, this is as you said, it's the coarse one here. And then the underlying tendency to what is remaining, that minute things, assess, that could be the one within Sanyojana. Is that what you are saying? In the fetter. That
exactly. I think maybe restlessness can relate to many different defilements. Maybe that's kind of one way of thinking about it. So it can relate to the defilement here of sensuality and ill will. Obviously, they are restless in a certain way, but then it can also relate to some of the very refined underlying tendencies, like the asmimana nusaya, the underlying tendency of the thought "I am." And that's a very refined thing. It's a very refined anusaya, which goes only eliminate at arahantship. So I think restlessness kind of relates to many different areas, and that's why it kind of is given up gradually, depending on where you are. So certain anusayas and certain sangyojanas are given up. You give up some of the restlessness, but it is also relates to some of the other ones. Something like that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. So giving up the sense of self, is the antidote for...
Sorry, say again?
Giving up sense of self.
Yeah.
Is the antidote for restlessness?
It is an antidote, but it's not really an antidote, because you can't really do it.
Yeah, I know. It's very difficult. It's as difficult as getting the hindrances out.
Yeah, so the antidote really is just staying with the meditation object here. If you want to talk about an antidote, I would say the main antidote in terms of people's ordinary practice, it is just giving up sense desires. Because sense desire is a very, very strong driver of restlessness. That's the main thing here. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that restlessness also has this very refined components related to the I. Yeah, so you have to give up the I as well. But I think that is something that you have to allow the meditation to look after, because it gets very refined at this particular point.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So. Okay.
I noticed when I did something like the 5 elements, thinking about the 5 elements of a human body, I got some joy from that.
Okay.
And then soon after, I get very restless. Is that because the self is being pushed to somewhere that it doesn't want to be?
Maybe, yeah, because sometimes there is like a reaction. And there's something inside of you which doesn't want that or delight in that. So there's kind of an underlying attachment to holding on, which kind of then suddenly kicks in and says, "No, don't want that. Go away." So that is quite possible. So it can make you. So it can actually. So you have to kind of just keep doing it until it kind of really bites, and you don't have that reaction anymore. Yeah.
So can you give yourself loving kindness and compassion because you're. Although there's no you, but you're sort of soothing yourself a bit. Yeah,
well, you can focus on the mind instead. You identify with the mind, Let go of the body. I don't need this body. Okay, let go of the body. Just identify with the mind. So yes, you can give yourself loving kindness, and that loving kindness also is obviously going to be more in the mind, because it's going to be more in the mind, then you identify with that instead, and then you kind of can let go of the body more.
Yeah, and you said something about the ego conceit of the thought I am.
Yeah.
But the 5 khandhas, so is the thought and the feeling the main things that we attach to out of the 5 khandhas? Or?
Sorry? What?
So the sense of I, does it mainly come from thoughts and feelings?
The sense of I is like, it can be a thought. It can also almost be like a perception. I am this, perceptions and thoughts. And so the idea is to overcome all of those. That's kind of the ultimate aim of the path. I am in all various areas.
Talking about remorse,
there
are, I think, suttas that says encourage the disciple to be shame of wrongdoing, etc. And also, I think meditation on the 32 parts of the body is turning towards remorseful.
Turning towards?
Remorse is threatening.
What is the connection between the 31 parts and the remorse?
31,
What's the
talking about the ugliness of the body. Leading to remorseful?
No. That's got nothing to do with remorse. There's nothing. That's just meaning that you detach from the body. That's a different thing. You just don't want to be so attached to the body. That's kind of the idea there. It's got nothing to do with remorse. But it's interesting what you point out about hiri ottappa, the shame and the seeing the danger or the consequences, and remorse. That's an interesting connection, because that's the idea that if you do something bad, you feel a bit shame. That's kind of the idea there. And that is useful. That is a good kind of shame, a good kind of remorse. Well, it's not really. Is it the same as remorse? It's kind of related, I suppose, because it stops you from doing those bad things in the first place. It kind of says, "Okay, stop, don't do it," and so it is helpful. So it's not, it's not, the idea here is not to overcome remorse by blotting it out, by pretending it's okay. The overcoming of remorse is done by avoiding those bad things in the first place, and the sense of shame helps you with that, and that's kind of why it is an advantage. Yeah, so you think, no, I don't want to be known for that. I don't even want to know myself for that. And when you don't want to know yourself for that, well, then you stop doing it. And then, of course, on top of that, there is the idea of forgiveness. Yeah, so this is another way of overcoming remorse: is you forgive yourself. You think, okay, actually, thinking back, I didn't have much choice. It was just situation was like this. It was my bad conditioning from the past coming out of me. It's not my fault. Yeah, my conditioning is like this. Yeah, and it would be true, right? It's not wrong, actually. And then you can forgive yourself. Okay, sometimes the pressure is so compelling and so powerful that you just have to do it. Yeah, who am I to withstand all of these pressures, right? The I is an illusion anyway. It's on the right track, right? But you have to see it in a deep sense, so that you believe that. You really see it in that particular way. And sometimes it is like that. If you look back a long way, you look back to maybe your childhood or when you were, 40, 50 years ago, whatever, and when you were young, and you think some of those things you did in those ways, in those days, you thought that you were in charge. You thought that you were making all these choices, but often in retrospect you look back and you can see kind of the forces working on you, and you start to feel, actually, maybe I wasn't so much in charge. Yeah, maybe this has just happened to me in a sense. That's what I think about when I became a Buddhist monk. I used to be very proud. Yeah, I became a Buddhist monk. Yeah, because why? Because I'm really smart. Yeah, I'm the best. I only choose good things. This is why I became a Buddhist monk. Yeah. But then when I think about it, and it looked like it was very free choice on my part. I wasn't born a Buddhist. There was no Buddhist. I didn't know any Buddhist. Nobody, zero. I had to kind of look up B in the white pages to find my way to a Buddhist organization. So for me, it was really it really looks like I did it, out of free will or whatever. But then when I think about it, actually, it was still kind of set in stone pretty much, I think. Everything in my life kind of was pointing me in that direction. Did I really have any choice? I don't think so. I think that was going to happen regardless to me, probably. And so it's kind of interesting. You see things from a larger perspective. You can see how you are almost compelled to do certain things. And the more you think about it, the more you're able to forgive yourself. But you never forgive yourself completely. This is the problem. There's always going to be a remnant inside of you that takes responsibility. Why? Because you still have a sense of self, and that sense of self will always take some degree of responsibility. And so don't think I can do whatever I want because I can just forgive myself afterwards. If you do that, it won't work. And then you will still have remorse. And so this is kind of how you forgive. So have that hiri-ottappa, that shame and fear of consequence is a very important part of the path. Allow that to guide you. And then, Am I saying anything useful? Or does it make sense? Or yeah? Are you sure? Yeah? What lead to depression? Yeah, okay. Well, the thing is to avoid remorse, right? It's not to build it up. Yeah. So So this you have less depression if you avoid it. So it's good. Follow the path and you have less depression as well. So, Okay, so let's go on to the last of the 5 hindrances. Giving up doubt, the meditate having gone beyond doubt, not undecided about skillful qualities, cleansing the mind of doubt. So doubt here is the uncertainty about what are skillful qualities, kusala dhamma. And so that basically means that sometimes we don't really understand what are the wholesome things in life. It is about a darkness about what is truly good and what is not. And here in meditation practice, it can manifest quite easily. Can you come to a certain point in a meditation, you don't know what to do next. You may feel, wow, things are going really well. I feel at ease. The mind is bright. The mind feels really wholesome. And then you're still stuck somehow. So why are you still stuck when things are going so well? You can't see anything wrong in your mind. And that is kind of a doubt. You don't know what to do next. I wonder now, what is next? What is really skillful here? And you, for example, you cannot see that what you should give up is like the doer, for example. That has become a problem in your meditation. Or some attachment to the 5 senses or whatever. You cannot see that actually is a skillful thing to do. And so you have doubt about what to do next. And the answer to overcoming that doubt then is very often just investigating the situation, investigating afterwards, learning from past experiences, learning from other people what they have done, asking the Buddha, what is the problem? And the Buddha would probably say, he might say that you still have an attachment to something, to the five sense world or something like that. And sometimes you can just go on that basis and then practice accordingly, and then deepen the meditation through that if you can't really find the problem in your own meditation. So investigating what is wholesome and unwholesome is really a very important part of this. And this is very closely related to the Dhammavicaya of the 7 factors of awakening. The second one, the Sati Sambojjhanga, the Dhammavicaya Sambojjhanga, which is understanding precisely about the dark and bright qualities, the blameless and blameworthy qualities, the skillful and unskillful qualities. You kind of start to divide the world up in this way, and then you find the way forward, learning from your experiences. So giving up doubt through investigation and understanding the Dhamma, undecided about skillful qualities, and then you become decided about skillful qualities, cleansing the mind of doubt. Okay, next comes a very nice sequence of similes. There are the similes about the 5 hindrances, but I don't think we should talk about them now, because I think that will be too much in one session. Otherwise, it's going to be too hard. So I think I will stop there. So is there any other questions before we come to the end? Prem.
The first 3 paths in the Noble Eightfold Path is also going towards developing skillful qualities, isn't it? Sila.
Yeah.
So this is further refining of those, or new things?
Yeah, I think there are many skillful and unskillful qualities that we know are skillful and unskillful. It's easy to know that anger is unskillful, or greed, or shouting at people, or whatever. So those are kind of the easy ones. But here, again, we're talking about understanding the very refined aspects of the mind. When the mind is already very bright, when you already have a nimitta, for example, where do I go from here? My mind is so bright, I got so much happiness and joy. What on earth could be more skillful than this? And you have no idea. And you don't know, and you don't know what to do. You have doubt about what comes next, right? That is kind of the doubting at this stage. Here you are kind of coming very close to the to the deep stillness of the mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah, and beyond overcoming the 5 hindrances, you also have the 7 factors of awakening as well. If you have a lot of piti, then what comes next? The sukha, and you kind of differentiate between different kinds of happiness. One is more skillful than the other one, etc. Degrees of passaddhi, degrees of tranquility. All of these things. You weigh them up. Yes.
I have a funny question. At the moment, there's the planets aligning. In Sri Lanka, there's a lot of think about astrological things.
Mm-hmm.
So that also goes to show, like, your life is going to be in a certain way. So the conditions are going to be like this.
Yeah.
Did the Buddha, in any of the suttas or discussions, ever touch on that aspect?
Yes. He said that astrology is wrong livelihood. That's what he said. He was very clear about that. It's actually found in the Brahmajala Sutta, one of the suttas I did here a few years ago. We went through all of those wrong livelihoods. One of them is astrology. The 5 planets are lined up. He said, forget about those 5 planets. That's basically what he said, So I don't know whether there's something to astrology. I tend to have a very open mind these days about anything. I used to be completely against astrology, but now I must admit I don't know anymore. The world is just too uncertain, and who knows what's going on with the world. But the point is that it's not really the point. Yeah, it doesn't really kind of get us anywhere. That's kind of the issue. So we just put it to one side. Yeah.
Yeah, Ajahn. Ajahn, I was wondering why in the 7 factors of awakening, after piti it's tranquility and not sukha, because often it's piti sukha, that sukha comes after piti, but it's actually tranquility.
Yeah.
Do you have much to say about that at all?
Yeah, sure. I think the reason is that the Buddha describes the path in slightly different ways in different places. If every sequence is not the same to give you slightly different angles on what is going on. And so what he's saying then maybe is that the main focus is on the path is actually the piti and the tranquility. You can bring in the sukha as well because it is certainly there, but it may not be as important as the other 2 factors because they are always found in these sequences. Yeah, piti and tranquility are found in the 7 factors of awakening, which is a core part of the Dhamma, the 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas, right? But it's also found in the dependent liberation sequence. It is also found in the Anapanasati Sutta. You find sukha. It is also found in the Anusatis. Yeah, you find so they're found. So they're found everywhere. Tranquility and piti. Sukha is found in most of those, but not everyone. And so I think it's just different angles, and I think it shows you that tranquility and piti are the most significant factors. Until you get to samadhi. Once you get to samadhi and you let go of piti completely, well then of course sukha comes into its own right at that particular point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Ajahn, recently you've been talking about conditions and conditioning. So are there certain conditions that lead to the defilements that are better to avoid, and certain conditions that lead to overcoming the defilements?
Yes, there are exactly. That's exactly what it is all about. It's about those conditions. And one of those conditions is just to watch the breath and to allow the defilements to fade away. That's one condition that leads to the overcoming of defilements. Another one is the sati sampajanya. You can just go, if you want to, you can just go through the previous factors of the path in the gradual training. And the one prior to this is contentment. So that is one condition that leads to overcoming of this. Sati sampajanya, which is mindfulness and clear awareness. Yeah, that is a condition. That is a condition that you tell yourself, well, why am I doing this particular thing? What is the purpose of it? And ideally, everything you do in your life should be for the purpose of developing the spiritual path. Yeah, you go to work. Why? To develop the spiritual path. Isn't that a nice way of thinking about work? It's just a beautiful way. Okay, I'm going to work today to develop the spiritual path. This is such a different way of thinking about things. I'm going to be kind to my co-workers. I'm going to see if I can make a cup of tea, for this fellow. I never made him a cup of tea before. See what happens when I do that. Maybe he will freak out and leave the company, but I'll check it anyway, see if I can do that. I was going to say something nice when I come in the morning to the receptionist, say something nice to the receptionist. You take all of these little things in life to be the spiritual path, right? It changes everything. This is how you kind of put the conditions into place. Just yesterday, I had one of the old presidents of the Buddhist Society. He was here for the meditation, and he said, these days I just so many things to do, and I don't really have much time for the spiritual path. And I said, you're joking? It's a completely wrong way of thinking. Of course there's time for the spirit. Everything is a spiritual path, yeah? When you go to work, be kind to your workers. He has his own company, so be kind to those workers. I don't know if he's kind. I'm not sure if he's kind to his workers or not. I think he probably is, actually. He's a very nice fellow. And everything is there. Everything can be partial for the spiritual path, and that is really what we should be doing, yeah? All of those things are conditions, yeah? Go, your fellow beings, your people here at the BSWA, look at them with compassion and kindness. Everyone you meet during the daily life, you're someone you see at the bus stop. Good day, mate. I don't know, whatever, yeah? Sometimes we have to do kind of crazy things because it opens up kind of new possibilities when we do crazy things, we say things and we do things, and it's kind of nice. One of the nice things about being a monk, you can do crazy things. People think you're crazy anyway, so there's no issue, right? It's kind of really easy. So Yeah, so it's all of these things are the conditions, yeah, just all of these things, and just overcoming in general in daily life, overcoming the defilements, moving towards the positive qualities, doing things for the right purpose. When you see the defilements arising, knowing how to overcome them, all of these things we're talking about, being forgiving, being compassionate at all times, understanding the suffering in the world, etc., etc., etc. Don't make it too complicated. When I say all of these things, it sounds like things get very complicated sometimes, so don't make it too complicated either. Just get a catchword, yeah, and kind of write it down on a piece of paper, put it on your door or whatever. You kind of leave your house, it says this kindness on the door, yeah, and or whatever. Kind of, if you're going to have a tattoo, have the kindness written on your arm. Every day you, you see kindness. So something like that, yeah. Very good. Okay, anyone else want to say anything? Yeah. Oh, online questions? Are there any questions online there?
No online.
No questions online. Okay, good. Yeah. So that means we have come to the end. So let's just pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha.